My name is Manalee Chowdhury, and I'm a sophomore from San Francisco, California. Today, I'll be presenting on the use of AI tools, specifically Perplexity, for venture capital decision making in the context of the physical AI industry. So here's a quick rundown of what I'll be covering today. I'll begin with an introduction to physical AI and then my chosen AI tool, which is Perplexity. Then I'll cover the experimental methods and tools, followed by my key observations, findings, and insights. So let's dive right in. I'll start off with NVIDIA's definition of what the physical AI industry is. Physical AI lets autonomous systems like cameras, robots, and self-driving cars perceive, understand, reason, and perform or orchestrate complex actions in the physical world. Essentially, physical AI encompasses the applications at the intersection of physics and AI. What I really want to emphasize here is this industry's complexity in terms of technology, manufacturing, and supply chain risks, besides the compliance and regulatory requirements. Not to mention, this industry is extremely capital and cash heavy. Thus, it's very important for investors to have the correct facts and figures, a deep understanding of the risks and challenges, and also a realistic market size so that they can make informed decisions, since the ROI happens over a longer time horizon and outsized returns can be elusive. Next, I'll be going over my chosen AI tool, which is Perplexity. Perplexity is an AI-powered search engine that leverages multiple large language models, including Sonar Large 2 and a mixture of experts architecture. It synthesizes real-time web search results into concise answers and provides direct citations in all of its responses, which was a determinant factor in why I even chose this AI tool, given the nuances of the physical AI industry. I approached Perplexity from the perspective of a VC analyst that was sourcing early-stage physical AI startups. I used natural language queries and reiterative prompting in order to simulate a real investment workflow. I tested the system across multiple dimensions, including generating startup lists, extracting technical details, identifying market trends, and generating structured outputs like tables, summaries, and playbooks. In terms of strengths, I found that Perplexity's major advantage comes from its high factual accuracy and citation-first approach. Each answer is grounded in sources, which is crucial for technological and financial research, since credibility is a really big requirement. It's also extremely context-aware and has iterative prompting, meaning that you can ask follow-up questions, refine your angle, and progressively deepen your analysis. However, there are some limitations. It is highly dependent on web data quality, so online available data that is inconsistent, incomplete, or biased, the outputs will reflect those gaps. It also has limited creativity and generative reasoning, meaning that it excels in summarizing existing information, but it struggles with ideation or being able to form novel investment theses. Perplexity is also sensitive to prompt framing, so if I change the perspective from even a VC to an analyst, the outputs would yield different results. Here, the key gap identified with Perplexity was its ability to generate actionable VC playbooks with minimal reiterative prompting. For my experimental investigation, the research question that I explored was, how does risk-oriented task framing influence Perplexity AI's analysis of VC opportunities in the physical AI industry? Or in other words, how does the way we change a prompt, opportunity compared to downside, materially change the investment narrative that the model produces? My hypothesis was straightforward. For an opportunity-focused prompt, the model would generate more positive, growth-oriented investment narratives. For a prompt that emphasized downsides, the output would then shift to more conservative, risk-centered analyses. As for my methodology, the independent variable here was prompt framing, opportunity versus downside, and neutral prompts. The dependent variables that were measured were the tone or sentiment of the response, the emphasis placed on risk, the depth of analysis, coverage of trends and regulations, and finally, the usefulness for VC decision-making. For my evaluation method, I created a rubric, which I then filled in after prompting with the AI each time. And essentially what this rubric told me was whether the response was more negatively oriented or positively oriented. Lower scores would mean that it centered maybe more on risk and was more negative, and higher scores meant that it was more positive and focused on growth. As for my controls, I used one variable, one company for all my prompts, which was SynLR, or Cybernetics Laboratory, and they're a visual intelligence-based robotics company that's doing some very exciting stuff. So I thought it'd be interesting to see how the AI reacted with a promising physical AI. For my results, I found that it's strongly aligned with my hypothesis in that prompt framing does shape the outputs immensely. Opportunity focused prompts tended to generate more positive, growth focused narratives with a minimal risk discussion, as opposed to downside focused prompts, which yielded more conservative, detailed risk analyses and highlighted operational challenges, but did fail to mention more what is the potential for growth. I found that neutral prompts tended to generate more shallow, generic outputs. So I decided to take it a step further and basically combine the prompts and add like two conflicting narratives essentially. And in these multidimensional prompts, I found that the outputs would tend to generate more hallucinations and offer a more truncated analysis. Meanwhile, narrow, focused prompts would generate more higher quality, actionable insights. So what I saw from this is that VC should use Perplexity as more of a directional analysis or insight instead of a fully synthesized investment thesis. Ultimately, the goal I see with Perplexity is that I'd like it to shift towards a model that delivers more balanced, evidence-grounded investment insights rather than one-sided narratives. And with this, I think there are three key recommendations that I would offer. First, explicit risk and explainability tagging. This would come through features like confidence scores, bias indicators, regulation, and trend tagging. Features like these would allow investors to more critically evaluate what the outputs are rather than just taking the outputs at face value. Second, separate evidence aggregation from analysis synthesis. And what I really mean here is separating the different stages that the AI goes to in order to make its final outcome. If we had a different stage where we could see where it's getting its citations from, it has a list of the citations, then we see where it's getting its analysis from for each individual source before finally producing the final outcome that we can see. It produces a more transparent and more reliable model because we're able to see the model at all the different stages rather than just relying on a black box model as it currently is. Finally, third, I'd like it to support multidimensional reasoning with conflicting viewpoints, and that the AI should be able to handle or balance different viewpoints so that it can produce a more investment synthesis rather than having to rely on two different biased outcomes. To integrate Perplexity into the investment workflow in the context of physical AI, I would start off with introducing it to the baseline research, and that would mean aggregating citations, understanding the competitive landscape, and getting an idea of what the risks and regulations are like using the AI. Then I would use dual prompt analysis in order to get an idea of what the opportunities are like and what the downsides are like, before finally integrating human review through cross-validation workshops. And this would mean reconciling our information in order to get a full investment synthesis and flagging outputs to see what were hallucinations or what is offering bad advice. Throughout this entire process, there should also be prompt documentation and engineering so that we are able to produce more reproducible methods. And this is all in an effort to create a workforce that accelerates research, ensures structured comparative insights, and preserves human oversight. What impact do I see AI tools having on investors? I think one, there will be more efficiency gains, and that analysts will have more time for critical evaluation and scenario planning. The dual prompting system will allow investors to more easily identify asymmetric opportunities as compared to risk. I also believe like the features that I mentioned before, such as confidence scoring and the bias indicators, would produce more higher quality, actionable insights that are easier for teams to evaluate. However, we still need to consider source skew, and source skew should be checked through cross-referencing materials. Also, to address over-reliance on the AI and algorithmic opacity, it's still very important that human review is integral to the process. For my final thoughts, I'd like to say today we covered a lot of PAs. We covered the physical AI industry, my tool Perplexity AI, and we did all of this at Phillips Academy. But I just like to say, I think there's another PA that can be applied to just integrating the use of AI tools into investment, and that is pretty ambitious. But I believe at the current place that we're in, I see AI benefiting investment and that we can combine model speed with evidence synthesis and evidence synthesis with disciplined human analysis in order to create the best investment synthesis or recommendations, at least in the context of physical AI. there's a lot of debate on whether how AI will displace human jobs and whether it's going to replace us or take over. But at this point, or how I see things from the research I conducted and the experimental exercise, AI is best used to augment human decision making rather than replace it. And I think as things stand today, AI will only augment the need for humans, and human review is very much still integral to the process. So, thank you. So, in the context of my industry, physical AI, I think I found exactly what you're saying, that Perplexity is very good for this baseline research and getting an understanding of what like the different factors of the industry looks like. It's actually very good for more risk analyses because it has a lot of knowledge of the hardware challenges and things like that. Sorry. As for like actually doing the analysis, I think that's where I would take a step back from Perplexity and look at the other AI tools that, the other fellows explored because it just still struggles with ideation and being able to use the information it compiled in order to create a solid recommendation or thesis. For I use natural language queries, so or more simply put, like asking questions as in how do you see the growth potential of SynLR and how could this company become a market leader? Or analyze the risks and challenges and what would prevent this company from scaling. Perplexity does have the capacity to include things like documents or CSV files and stuff like that. However, for the variable that I chose, opportunity downside, which is more looking at the tone of the prompts indicated, I felt that it was better put to use more natural language queries. Simply because in the documents, of course, is some bias, and depending on where, if you get them from the company, it'll tend to be a more positive outlook. But yeah, that just adds another layer to my further research if I continue to, which is to look at how can we look at the specificity of the prompt and what change would it make if I looked at different input variables to the overall recommendation that the model offers. Yeah, it's so the full thing is Cybernetics Laboratory. It's Deep Technology, a startup company based in India. What they're doing right now is more robotics, I would say. I think one of their biggest projects right now is like the claw, if you've heard of it. Like, how can robots be able to grasp things in the same way that humans can? And that has to do a lot more with like sensor technologies and using the real world as like a data set almost, so that they can train on different objects. But, like for me, it would be pretty interesting to see if we just had a robot randomly walking around that could hold open the door or something like that.